Part 1. The darkness falls. The world was quiet. Too quiet. Liana sat alone in her small apartment. The lights off, the air heavy with silence. The job she had dreamed of for years had slipped away. The person she loved most had walked out the door without looking back. Her heart felt like a city after a storm. Broken windows, empty streets, everything she built lying in ruins. She whispered to herself, maybe this is it. Maybe some people just aren't meant to be happy. The night outside was endless. She hadn't seen the sunrise in days. But even in her darkness, a soft thought flickered like a candle, a memory of her mother's words. No matter how long the night, my girl, the sun always rises. She didn't believe it then, but that whisper of memory refused to die. But Part 2, when everything falls apart. Days turned into weeks. Liana stopped going out, stopped talking to friends, stopped playing the piano she once loved. Her apartment was full of unwashed dishes and unopened letters, symbols of how far she'd fallen. One morning, her neighbor, an old man named Mr. Reyes, knocked on her door. He smiled kindly and said, "You've been keeping the curtains closed for too long. Let the light in, young lady." Liana didn't answer, but when he left, she looked at the window. For the first time in weeks, she pulled the curtain slightly aside. A single beam of sunlight entered the room, warm, gentle, alive. It touched her face, and something inside her broke, not from pain, but from relief. Tears fell quietly as she realized how much she'd missed the light. Part 3. Learning to breathe again. The next morning, Liana forced herself to step outside. The world hadn't changed, but she had. The air smelled like rain and hope. She walked slowly to the park she used to visit. Every step felt heavy, but every breath felt new. She sat under a tree and watched the children play. Their laughter reminded her of something she had forgotten. Life moves forward, even when you stand still, she whispered. Maybe I can start again. Slowly, but I can. That evening, she picked up her old journal. She wrote one simple line. The sun will rise again, and so will I. Part 4. Building Hope. Liana started making small changes. She began volunteering at a nearby community center, teaching music to children. Every time she played the piano again, the melody healed something inside her. One of the children once asked, "Miss Liana, why do you always smile when you play sad songs?" She smiled softly and said, "Because even sad songs end beautifully, like nights turning into mornings." Her words came from truth. She still had bad days, days when fear whispered that she'd fail again. But she kept reminding herself, the sun doesn't ask permission to rise, and it just does. And she decided to be like that sun. Part 5. The Dawn. 1 year later, Liana stood on a hill overlooking the city. It was early morning. The horizon was still dark, but she could see the faint line of gold spreading across the sky. She thought about all she had lost, and everything she had gained from it. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed her. She was no longer the girl who gave up. She was the woman who learned how to rise. As the first light of dawn broke, she whispered with a smile, "You were right, Mom. The sun always rises." The light touched her face, warm and full of promise, and in that moment she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Part 6. The Lesson. Later that day, Liana wrote in her journal again. Hope isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's believing that someday, somehow, the light will return. And when it does, you'll see why the darkness was necessary. She closed the book, looked at the sky, and smiled, because she knew, no matter what storms may come again, the sun would always rise, and so would she.